part 2 of the Georgia Milestones Math Review. We're going to look at ratio and proportional relationships. And that's from Unit 2, and we'll cover numbers 9, 12, 18, 28, 30, 32, 38, and 41. For this part of the review, you can use a calculator. Okay, and it even tells you up here at the top, you may use a calculator for this part of the test. For the rest of the review, we will be able to use a calculator. So number 9 says, students in Miss Joshi's English class are assigned chapters of a book to read each week. The graph shows that the number of chapters assigned based on the number of weeks is proportional. And I know it's a proportional relationship because I have a graph, and my graph is a straight line, and it goes through the origin of the graph there. So I know it's a proportional relationship. So if I look at my question, it says, what does the 0.14 represent? Okay, well, I get that from my graph here. Now, 1 is in my x position on my x-axis. Okay, x runs horizontal, and it even shows you here that this is the x-axis. My second coordinate is my y. Y runs vertical, and it tells you up here on the graph there. Okay, now it tells us that the x-axis represents weeks, so we're counting weeks here, and we're counting by twos. And then the y-axis is also counting by twos, and that's the chapters read, the number of chapters that the students read. So our point is 1, 4. So we're going to go over 1, so halfway in between 0 and 2, and up to 4. So that would be right here on the graph. Okay, so we're going to read our answer choices to see what that 0.14 represents. A says 4 students are each assigned 1 chapter. Okay, well, it doesn't have anything to do with weeks, so A is not correct. B says only 1 student is assigned 4 chapters. Okay, these are for all the students in the class, so that one is not correct. C, all students are assigned 1 chapter every 4 weeks. Well, 4 goes with my chapters, so that is not correct. And then D, all students are assigned 4 chapters each week. That is correct. 4 chapters for 1 week. So each week we get 4 chapters. So D is the correct answer there. And we can check that. So each week we go, we gain another week. We should go up 4 chapters. So 1 week, 4 chapters, 2 week, 8 chapters. So that we increase by 4 there. So that we know that that is correct. Okay, so our next one is number 12. It says if there are 64 crayons in 4 boxes and each box contains the same number of crayons, if C represents the total crayons in B boxes, which equation could be used to model the situation? So we're going to start with our total amount of crayons, 64 crayons total, okay? So that would represent my C, okay? B represents how many boxes? Well, I know that there are 4 boxes, okay? So I got to see which equation will tell me my total amount of crayons. Well, as you can see, my total is represented by C. So it's going to be either C or D I'm looking for. Okay, now I've got 16 in these 2 equations here, and 16 comes from they took 64 total crayons and divided it by the 4 boxes. 4 goes into 6 one time, with 2 left over, bring down your 4. 4 goes into 24 6 times. So what that means is there's 16 crayons per box. Okay, and then times my 4 boxes would give me 64 crayons total. Okay, and if I look to see which equation I have like that, then I can see B won't work. A will not work because that's B represents the total boxes. B will not work because B stands for boxes. C, I have the total boxes at 64, but I'm not dividing anything. I didn't divide, I multiplied. So D is my correct answer. 64 crayons equals 16 crayons per box times the number of boxes, which was 4 boxes. That would give me my total amount of crayons represented by C, which is 64. Okay, for number 18 is our next one. Okay, now remember this unit is all about ratios and proportions, so we're going to be setting up a lot of proportions and looking at ratios as we go along. 18 is a good example here. It says Deep reads 1/6 of a book in 1/4 of an hour. At this rate, what fraction of the book will he read in 1 hour? Okay, so we're looking at how much he reads and the amount of time measured in hours here. Okay, so that's going to be our proportion here. Well, he reads 1/6 of a book in 1/4 of an hour. Okay, now notice we have a fraction inside of a fraction. That's okay. We call this a complex fraction. That's perfectly fine. And on this side, we're also going to have some more fractions as well. So at this rate, what fraction of the book will he read in 1 hour? Okay, well, we're talking about hours, so 1 is going to go on the bottom, since hours on the bottom, and we're looking for how much he reads. Okay, that would be our x there. So here we have a proportion, so we're going to cross multiply to solve it. We have 1/4 x equals 1/6 times 1 gives me 1/6. Okay, now here we still have a one-step equation. Okay, to solve this equation, put your line down the middle. Now I have to get rid of 1/4, so I would divide by 1/4. Okay, now since we have a calculator, you can put that in your calculator, and I'll show you how to do it in the calculator. Turn it on here. So I've got, if I divide both sides by 1/4, I'll have 1/6. Put that in your calculator first, divided by 1/4, and then hit enter, and I get 2/3. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do that in case you do not have a calculator or you come across a problem, and we can solve it by hand and then check it in the calculator. So without a calculator, we cannot divide by a fraction, so instead we multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 1/4. Now the reciprocal means I flip the fraction. So I'm going to multiply by 4/1. And I'm going to do that to both sides. This side cancels out, and I'm left with x. And then when I multiply fractions, I multiply straight across. 1 times 4 is 4. 6 times 1 is 6. So I get 4/6. Well, I can simplify this by dividing top and bottom by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I get 2/3, which is the same thing I get in my calculator. So in 1 hour, he will read 2/3 of a book. Okay. Our next one is number 28. Okay, this one says Ron's lawnmower uses 1/4 of a gallon of gas to mow 1/3 of the field. How much gasoline will her lawnmower use to mow the entire field? Okay, so the two things we're talking about here are we're talking about gallons, okay, gallons of gas to how much field she can mow. So we're going to do gallons over field. Okay, so we start with our original information. She uses 1/4 of a gallon, so 1/4 is going to go on top to mow 1/3 of the field. So 1/3 is going to go on the bottom. Okay, so that's going to equal my other side of the proportion. So it says how much gasoline will her lawnmower use to mow the entire field. Now notice it didn't give me a number here in my question, but it says the entire field. So that is one whole field. So 1 is going to go on the bottom here because that's how many fields we're mowing. It's just one whole field. And we're looking for the amount of gasoline. So I put an X there for the gallons. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. I get 1/3 x equals 1/4 times 1 is 1/4. Okay, I'm going to solve this ratio. I'm going to solve this equation here by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of 1/3. 1/3 flipped is 3/1. So I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal on both sides. This side cancels out. I'm left with x. 1 times 3 is 3, and 4 times 1 is 4. So I get 3/4, and I can't simplify that any. And if I check that in my calculator, I've got 1/4 1/4. Make sure you get out from underneath your fraction. Divided by 1/3. And then hit enter, and I get 3/4. So C is my correct answer. She's going to use 3/4 gallons to mow the entire field. Okay, our next one is number 30. It says Kalala is purchasing supplies for her restaurant. The table shows the number of avocados X and the cost in dollars Y for that number of avocados. So here I have my chart. Number of avocados here, cost is here. So what is the unit rate that Kalala pays for avocados in dollars per avocado? Okay, now it tells me how it wants it. Dollars per avocado. Dollars comes first, then avocado. So that's how we're going to set up our proportion. Dollars to avocados. Okay, so we can pick any of these ratios here. It doesn't matter which one. We're all going to get the same answer no matter which one we use, and I'll show you that in the calculator in just a minute. So I'm just going to pick the first one here since it's just at the top. So I have $11.64 for 12 avocados. Okay, now it says what's the unit rate? Unit rate is how much it costs for one of something. Okay, unit rate means one. So how many avocados? One avocado. How much would it cost? My X goes there in my cost, my amount of dollars. So I cross multiply here. So I get 12x equals, cross multiply, and I get $11.64. I'm going to divide that by 12. That side cancels. And I can put this in my calculator. $11.64 divided by 12 is going to give me 97 cents. So the unit rate, how much it costs for one avocado, is 97 cents, which is C. And I can check these in my calculator. All of these should come out to be 97 cents. Now I've already did the first one. I took my cost and divided it by my number of avocados. If I do the second one, $14.55 divided by 15 avocados, I get 97 cents. And then if I use the last one, $20.37 divided by 21 avocados, I get 97 cents. So my unit rate is the same. It's a proportional relationship. It's going to stay the same throughout. I'm always going to get 97 cents. Okay, and then our next one is number 32. It says Maddie has 3 boxes. The first box weighs 22 pounds. The second box weighs 20% more than the first box. And the third box weighs 10% less than the second box. How much does the third box weigh? Okay, remember when we're working with percents, we always start out with 100% of something. Okay, so my starting weight was 22 pounds of the box. That's 100% of the weight. Okay, now the second box weighs 20% more. More means I'm going to add. So I'm going to take my 100%, I'm going to add 20% to it. That gives me 120%. Okay, so I have 120% increase in weight from my first box. So I'm going to take 22 pounds and I'm going to multiply it by 120% as a decimal. Now remember to change a percentage into a decimal. I start with my decimal and I move it 2 times to the left. 1, 2. So I get 1 and 20 hundredths. Okay, so when you take 22 and you multiply it by 1 and 20 hundredths, that gives you 26 and 4 tenths. Okay, that's the weight of the second box. Okay, now the third box weighs 10% less than the second box. Now less means I need to subtract. So I'm going to take 100%, the total weight, and I'm going to subtract 10% from it, okay, because it's 10% less. That leaves me with 90%. So I'm going to take the weight of the second box, which was 26 and 4 tenths, and I'm going to multiply it by 10% less than its actual weight, so 90% of that as a decimal. So take your decimal, move it 1, 2 spots to the left, and you get 90 hundredths. And 26 4/10 times 90 hundredths gives you 23 76 hundredths pounds. So the correct answer there is C. Okay, our next one is number 38. Okay, now if we look at number 38, it says Ava runs a comic book store. She buys collectible figures from the manufacturer for $6.68 and marks up the price by 25% to sell to her customers. A customer buys a collectible figure using a 10% off coupon, which is applied before an 8% sales tax is added. What is the total the customer will pay for the collectible figure? Now, in this problem, we have a lot going on. We've got increases and we have decreases. So we're going to take it one step at a time, okay? So we're going to start with $6.68. Okay, that is 100% of our cost there, all right? Now, she marks up the price. If you mark it up, that means we're increasing. We're going to be adding 25% to it. So we're going to plus 25. So 100 plus 25 gives me 125%. Okay, take 125%, change it into a decimal. 1, 2 times to the left, that gives me 1 25 hundredths. Okay, so $6.68 times 1 25 hundredths gives me $8.35. Okay, so Ava's going to sell that collectible for $8.35. So then a customer is going to buy it with a 10% off coupon. So it's 10% off. So I'm going to start with 100% again. And I'm going to subtract 10% from it. So that leaves me with 90%. So the customer is going to pay 90% of $8.35. So I'm going to change this 90% to a decimal, move my decimal 2 places to the left, and I get 90 hundredths. So she's going to pay 90% of $8.35. So if I take $8.35 and multiply it by 90 hundredths, then that's going to give me $7, and it's going to be 515 thousandths. Now, talking about money, so I only need 2 decimal places, 1, 2. So I look at my next number, and if it's 5 or more, I round this number up. If it's 4 or less, I keep it the same. So I can see that my number here is a 5, so that means I'm going to round the 1 up to a 2. So that's going to give me $7.52. Okay, so the customer is going to pay $7.52 for it. But she has to pay the 8% sales tax. Okay, now tax is always added. Okay, so I'm going to start with 100% of that price, and I'm going to add 8% to it. So that gives me 108%. So I have my decimal at the end. I'm going to move it 2 times to the left. So from that $7.52, she's going to add in another 8%. So I'm going to multiply it by 1 8 hundredths. So $7.52 times 1 8 hundredths. Okay, now this time I get $8. And then I get 1,216 10,000ths. Again, I only need 2 decimal places. Okay, so 1, 2. I look at my number after it. It is a 1. Okay, that's 4 or less. So I'm going to keep my 2 the same. So it's going to be $8.12. So that would be A. And then for your last problem is number 41. Okay, number 41 says, which table shows a proportional relationship between X and Y? Okay, when we're looking for proportional relationships and all we have to go on is X and Y, we have a formula. We're looking for the constant of proportionality, okay? and we have a formula. K equals y over x. All right, in order for this to be a proportional relationship, our constant, our K, must be the same every time. And to get our K, we take y and divide it by x. Okay, so let's look at A here. This is first table. We're going to take our constant and find it by taking 35 and dividing it by 25. Okay, y value over x value. So I'm going to do that in my calculator here. 35 over 25. That gives me 7/5. Now you can do it as a fraction, or you can do it with division. 35 divided by 25. Either one is fine as long as you're consistent all the way through. Okay. I just like to divide 35 divided by 25, so I'm going to do 1 4/10. And then I'm going to do the same for the next one, 40 over 30. So as long as I keep getting 1 4/10, I keep going. I have to check every one of these. If I get something different, then I can stop. So 40 divided by 30 gives me 1 3/10 repeating. Okay, since my constants here are different, then I know that that one is not correct. Okay, so I'm going to try the same thing for B. Y over x, so 5 over 25. So I'm going to have 5 divided by 25, and that gives me 2/10. Okay, so every other one of these needs to be 2/10 for it to work. So I'm going to have 4 divided by 30, and that gives me 4 over 30. Gives me it gives me 1300ths with the 3 repeating. So these two decimal numbers are not the same, so B will not work. For C, when I try this one, constant equals y over x, 5 over 25. So I got 5 divided by 25. Gives me 2/10. And then I have, for the next one, I've got 10 over 30. Now this one has to also equal 2/10 for me to keep going. 10 divided by 30 is 3/10 repeating. So those aren't the same. Okay, so D should be my answer because that's the only one left. So we're going to check it to make sure that we didn't make a mistake anywhere. So I've got 5 over 25, which I know is 2/10 from the previous ones. So I'm going to check 6 over 30. So let's do it again. 5 over 25 is 2/10. So 6 divided by 30 is 2/10. Okay. Now I've got to get all of them that are the same. So I have to check 8 over 40. I can't stop short. So 8 divided by 40 gives me 2/10 also. So D is my proportional relationship. I'm always going to use a formula. My constant K equals my Y value divided by the X value. That's always how you prove if a relationship is proportional or not. Okay, and then that is the end of the part 2 review.